Kia ora everyone. Thanks for joining me. I'm here in the Beehive up on the 9th floor while the house is in session. Just thought I would check in and share a few thoughts in the aftermath of the announcement of our housing package. So a very quick recap on the package itself. For those of you who might have missed it today. We announced it at 9 o'clock this morning. You would have seen me there present with Minister Robertson, our Finance Minister, our Minister for Housing, Megan Woods, and also our Minister for Revenue. And the reason for that is because this is a package, a housing package that traverses the range of issues that we're dealing with in this housing crisis. So the first thing that I would say is that there is no silver bullet to resolving the issues that we're seeing in housing. There is no quick fix. It is a complex issue. It has built up over a number of decades. But our view is there are things that we can do that will make a really tangible difference to the crisis we're seeing. First thing I'd also say is that the issue we're trying to address is one of both a lot of heat in the market, and I don't need to tell all of you that. You will have seen the headlines. You will have seen the really incredible house price growth that we've seen, particularly over the last 12 months. So if you look back to February of last year, there was a view that we might potentially see, for instance, house prices collapse. There were some who were of the opinion that in the COVID environment we may see a collapse of the housing market. That has proven not to be the case. What we've seen over the last 12 months since those predictions were being made, we've seen house price growth of over 20% in a year. It has been extraordinary. And our view is that we just couldn't stand by and say, well, look, the predictions were wrong, but there was nothing to be done. We had to act on that. Now, in order to act, we wanted to make sure that we were looking at what the evidence was telling us about what was happening in the housing market. And what's been really interesting is, in particular, the growth in the proportion of the housing market that has been those who are classified as investors. We've seen 15,000 people, for instance, who in recent months who have been in the housing market where they have owned multiple properties at the point that they've been going into the housing market and purchasing additional housing. So we know, and the Reserve Bank has said this as well, we know that a lot of the heat that's in there at the moment are from those who already own homes. They aren't looking for just a home for themselves. And are those who you could classify also as speculators. So if we know that that's part of the issue, that was an area that we wanted to target. So two things you might have seen today on what we would call the demand side measures. So, addressing the fact that we have just so much heat in the market at the moment. One of the things that we decided to do, and that was on the advice that we received, was we already have in New Zealand, it was something that was introduced by the national government, that if someone is, other than their family home, purchasing a home with the intent to sell it in order to make money by flipping it within a certain time frame, that would be taxed. Now that's called the Bright Line test. We had it at 5 years. On the advice of the reality of what's going in the market at the moment, the advice to us was to extend it. So we've done that and we're extending it to 10 years. The point again I would just make is that this does not apply to the family home. This is for people or houses that are in addition to the family home. So that's the first thing. The second thing is an issue of interest deductibility. You might have heard a bit of debate about it in the media today. Not an issue that will widely be known, but at the moment it's really an advantage that exists in the way that interest is able to be deducted by those who own an investment property or multiple investment properties. So we've closed that tax loophole. And that will apply for anyone who's purchasing houses from the 27th of March. For those who already own a property, you're aware that they would have already built into their finances and their thinking interest deductibility. And so we want to make sure that we, in making this change for them, that we do it in a way that we're transitioning. And so they'll have 4 years where this will phase out for those who hold an existing investment property and are using interest deductibility rules. So the short of that one is basically we're closing off a tax loophole, encouraging people that if they are wanting to pick up an investment property, that actually they look to new builds. And that's a really important point for this package. A lot of discussion around what will this mean for rents? Will it mean that we have fewer people who are investing in property and therefore fewer homes in the rental market, and therefore will it mean that rents go up? We need to increase the number of houses being built in New Zealand. And so what we're specifically doing to make sure we're incentivising that is saying that the changes we're making to the Bright Line test and to interest deductibility, that tax loophole I just discussed, will not apply to new builds. That's one way that we can encourage people to invest in new builds because that's really what we want people to do right now, including if they're investors. And there, of course, will always be a place for investors in the New Zealand housing market. We just really want to channel them towards those new builds right now because that'll make a big difference for all of us. The next big piece of the puzzle is just how else do we encourage the building of additional houses. Now, if you ask council or local government what is standing in the way of large-scale development in your communities where house prices are going up and where there's not enough housing, and they would say infrastructure, pipes and roads to either greenfield site or existing brownfield sites where actually we should be building houses, but we're not. And so one of the things we're aware of that lots of these councils, the idea of them being able to take on extra debt to provide that infrastructure is not realistic. So that's why we've put forward a $3.8 billion infrastructure fund, essentially to try and accelerate that house building program across the country. And that will be massive for unlocking supply in the future, for building more houses. The last thing, frequently I hear from people, for those first home buyers who want to get into the market, and that's who we're trying to tilt the balance towards. They'll often say, oh, look, actually a deposit is, really hard to muster in this environment because, your rental costs might be high, but you might actually have enough to cover a mortgage. It's just the idea of getting that deposit together. Now, we already have home buyer products that exist to help with that. We have the first home loan grants and the first home loan program, which basically means that you can get support so that you only need 5% as a deposit for your first home. But there are income caps on that and there are price caps. So today we have lifted the income caps and the price caps. We've kept them at a level, though, that we know people with those incomes will be able to service a mortgage. So for those who ask, why haven't we lifted it higher, that's the reason. We want to make sure that we're not pushing people into unaffordable mortgages as we go. So you'll hear a lot of commentary out there about what difference this package will make. As I said at the beginning, this is a complex issue. The housing crisis we have has not happened overnight. It's built up over a number of decades, and it will require more than one initiative to start making a difference and to start turning things around. My view is, though, that when you couple this together with the work that we've done on public housing, to build more state houses, to increase the number of transitional houses, to house the chronically homeless, to make sure that we are supporting people to stay in tenancy, to give more stability in our tenancy legislation, that all of this taken together should start making a difference. So that's a little summary, and my hope is that, of course, we won't see that ongoing, really unsustainable house price growth, which ultimately actually threatens our economy as well. So stay tuned for, the outcome of some of this package, some extra work that we're doing. One thing I will say, for those of you who interested in the future of perhaps being an investor in the housing market, who want to know how the rules will apply for new builds, the exemptions, we will be out consulting on how those should apply, making sure that we get that right. So we'll be doing that over the next few months. Otherwise, thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate your time and for jumping online. I'm sorry I've done a very, very poor job tonight of reading as I go. It's fair to say the comments are a little longer than I'm able to take in while I'm talking to you. So I'll make sure I go back and take a look though. But till then, thanks for your time and talk to you all again soon. Ka kite.